If there's one thing that's been common among all ages of people throughout history, it's the feeling of apathy. A time where you just want to lounge around, do nothing, and everything seems just kind of pointless. It's a lack of feeling, desire, or interest in anything that can strike us at times and make us forget about all the wonderful things that the world can offer us. It's something that can be hard to break out of, to regain interest in anything, and it's not always simple as being offered something new. But there's one older movie that tries its best to encourage people to see the world, to embrace learning, and it's done by Chuck Jones of Looney Tunes fame of all things. A little film that tries to inspire people to look at the world with fresh eyes. Let's talk about The Phantom Tollbooth. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, I am your ever-friendly Pokeprof, and welcome back to Fascinating Fiction. Yeah, we're doing another movie that was made before I was even born, but don't worry, I've come to realize just how movie-heavy we've been for the last couple of episodes, and I'll be making a focused effort on us talking about actual series again here soon enough, especially since I now have a better idea of just how you folks want me to handle it. I also apologize ahead of time if I sound a little stuffed up right now. That's because I am. Allergy season has kicked in around here, so I might be sounding a little off for a few episodes. To get to the subject at hand though, The Phantom Tollbooth is very similar to The Princess Bride in a lot of ways. Phantom Tollbooth started out as a book written by Norton Juster back in 1961. Originally tasked with a grant to write a children's book about cities, he pushed his focus elsewhere, realizing that many kids grew up in suburbs and would have nothing to do with them. He also wanted to give kids an interest in learning, allowing them to see the excitement of the world. It would get the attention of MGM and Chuck Jones, both who had originally adapted one of Juster's other works, The Line and the Dot. Despite being finished in 1968, the film actually wouldn't be released into theaters until 1970, thanks to ongoing issues with MGM, in which this would actually be the last thing that the animation studio ever did, shuttering its doors shortly after the movie's release. Despite this and the movie being a complete and total flop afterwards, the film has a bit of a cult following and is well loved by its fans. There's even been talks about remaking the film, but that's kind of been left in production hell since 2010. It shouldn't surprise you all that this movie is a musical, both because Jones was well known for incorporating music into many of his most famous cartoons, but also because you should know me by now and my love for musicals at this point. You should never be surprised when I pull in a musical of some kind to talk about on this show. We start things proper with the film showing us our main character Milo suffering through the last few minutes of school and being overwhelmed by information, all of it becoming a jumbled mess. This is pushed even further by the fact that we immediately get the first song of the film, aptly named Milo's Song.
What's to become of Milo? What will he grow to be? Little fellow, what's wrong?
The song itself focuses on just how out of it Milo is, not really engaging with anything in the world around him, both for things that should have entertained a kid in the 70s, and things that would have been a danger to him, like walking through a construction site. Even for a big city, you'd think some place like this would kick a kid out the moment they even got close to the entrance. But this feeling of him not caring for the world is further enforced by the time he gets home, talking to his buddy Ralph on the phone, who has a similar attitude. All of it comes down to just how pointless everything feels.
I'm in school. All I want to do is be out. When I'm not in school, I want to be someplace else.
It's with this complaining that the magic of the movie hits, a large package for Milo appearing in his living room. Opening it reveals the titular Phantom Tollbooth, there to give Milo something to do. Giving him a toy car and a map of weird locations, Milo decides that he's got nothing better to do and tries it out, though only after playing around with the sudden transformation into a cartoon character. From this point onward, the movie is more a series of events than a continuing storyline, which from what I recall is about the same as the book it's based off of. The first thing we run into is Officer Short Shrift, being among the many characters voiced in the film by Mel Blanc, the voice of Bugs Bunny and many other classic Looney Tunes characters. Obsessed with proving anyone guilty, Shrift here seems to make up things just to give Milo a short sentence: I am. Yeah, The Phantom Tollbooth is that kind of book, where puns and other jokes of that ilk were exceedingly common. As someone who grew up reading Piers Anthony, it's nothing compared to someone actually chasing after a running nose like in those novels, but it's about the same kind of stuff you get here. Next up, we get the Weatherman, whose whole point is to manage expectations, encouraging people to make up decisions, but is full of all this endless talk thanks to him being about the whether or not something is going to happen. Like Short Shrift, he doesn't seem to have any focus, and Milo quickly gives up dealing with him to move on. It's only when we get to our next big event that we get both our next big song and actually moving the plot forward, as Milo, being the bored, sleepy little boy he is, ends up in the doldrums. He meets with the sludgy people known as the Lethargians, who are all about lounging around and not doing anything, just killing time, encouraging Milo to do the same.
Don't say there's nothing to do in the doldrums. It's just not true.
Turns out, though, when you're in a world of concepts taking on literal meaning, being in a place where you can't do anything means you can't do anything. Like breathing. That's when we get introduced to our second major character of the movie, Talk, a watchdog who patrols the doldrums. Turns out the only reason you end up in the doldrums is by not thinking, so you've got to think your way out of there otherwise. In this case, using a lot of the thoughts that Milo had written off at the beginning of the film. Talk joins Milo for the rest of the movie, saying that he watches over boys as much as he watches over the Lethargians, and felt that Milo needed a watchdog. A time-related pun from Milo ends up with Talk singing probably one of the more catchier songs in the film, Time is a Gift.
Time is a gift, fleeting and swift, ticking and talking itself away of saying better beware. Time is a gift given to you, given to give you the time you need to have the time of your life.
This is where we get a lore-dump from Talk about the world we find ourselves in, which used to be known as the Kingdom of Wisdom, a land of unbridled knowledge. This changed when the old king passed away and his sons took over, splitting the kingdom into two: Dictionopolis, the Kingdom of Words, and Digitopolis, the Kingdom of Numbers. This also comes with Talk ending a short-lived joke of lightning flashing every single time Milo says the words castle in the air, pretty much doing the same joke that young Frankenstein did with Blucher. Oh, come on, it's not even Halloween! It's about this point, however, that the disjointedness of the film really becomes apparent to the audience. I mentioned earlier that everything here becomes a series of events, and that's nowhere near as obvious as we run into Cacophonous A Discord. Oh, CAD. I get it. But yeah, he's got his own song about how much he loves noise, and serves little purpose in the film otherwise.
Noise, beautiful noise. Wonderful, deafening, ear-splitting noise. Horrible, hideous, awful, insidious. Noise, noise, noise.
But this is where I'm wanting to bring up one of the major aspects of the Phantom Tollbooth, and one of the comparisons that are often made to it. When people describe this movie or the book it's based off of, more often than not they'll mention how similar it is to another literary classic, Alice in Wonderland. Both stories focus on their young characters going off into a crazed world that makes no logical sense, but the feel between the two are different in a key point: the driving force behind the characters' actions. In her story, Alice is constantly looking for the White Rabbit, focused entirely on wanting to learn more about him until the very end of the story, in which she's just wanting to get home. Even if she's stopped by all the different creatures within Wonderland, we're constantly reminded about the rabbit, either them appearing or being mentioned, and Alice pushes forward. Milo, by comparison, doesn't get anywhere near as much urgency in his character. Part of it simply is because of how his character is designed and the lesson that the Phantom Tollbooth is trying to give the viewers, to encourage learning and an excitement for it. But despite the constant mention of the castle in the air and the characters within it, it feels more like an eventual destination for Milo to reach, instead of a place that he needs to get to so that we can fix the Kingdom of Wisdom. This isn't inherently a bad thing, since not every story needs us to be constantly pushed along, but it does feel pointless at times when the characters are constantly being stopped for one reason or another. It's the same complaint that I have with most slice of life content as well, where I feel the lack of progress or importance in what I'm watching, especially for a movie where we're already a third through its running time, and it feels more like random events than anything else. That's clearly more a taste thing on my end, though. We actually spend the next good chunk of the movie in Dictionopolis, the Kingdom of Words. We get a lot more jokes and puns that are from the book, including the fact that letters grow on trees, because of course money doesn't grow on them. This is where we not only get introduced to one of the other main characters that will join us for the rest of the film, the Humbug, but where we learn more about the history of the land we're in from the minor character of the Witch, sister of the Weatherman. Turns out that everything was kept at peace thanks to the two princesses named Rhyme and Reason, being very much the living embodiments of those aspects. When the twin kings asked if words or numbers was better and got told that both were of equal value, they banished the princesses. It's why all the characters have overload of puns and don't make much sense, with talk even mentioning there's only one sane person left in the land.
Most everyone's mad here.
It's with King Azaz that we get another song about how great words are compared to numbers, though I consider it one half of a song, as you'll soon see.
If you think a great thought, how do you write it down? Words, string them into sentences, and thoughts profound will abound.
What's perhaps the most aggravating thing here from a story perspective is that it takes very little for Milo to convince Azaz to let the princesses return. It really all depends on the next major character that we meet, the Math Magician, King of Numbers. This is also where we get a reprise of the word song, but it being focused on numbers instead.
If you had a big plan, how would you know how big? Numbers, those two decimal dearies, square root and mixed and series.
After convincing the Math Magician, it's about here you realize just what themes the movie is really trying to give you. It's not just about learning for the sake of learning, about how many words you can speak or numbers you can count, but it's how you use them. All the knowledge of the world is there for you to use, but it doesn't amount to anything if you're not using them with a purpose. We've got one more pit stop before the climax of the film, meeting up with Not Bugs Bunny here conducting the sunset. More to show off the music and animation talent that Chuck Jones and the Merry Melodies crew were known for more than anything else. We eventually get to the Mountains of Ignorance, the only thing preventing us from reaching the princesses. The mountain is home to a bunch of different demons, and this is where the artists get to flex their creative muscles, making up a lot of monsters and creatures to try and match some of the wilder descriptions from the original book. This is actually something they shared with the artist from said book, Jules Pfeiffer, who was said to be in a constant competition with Juster, and just who could outdo the other in terms of making the Demons of Ignorance. It resulted in a lot of interesting designs, like the threadbare excuse here. After using the magic of numbers and words to defeat the demons, Milo ends up in the castle in the air, meeting with the princesses. Turns out they weren't even trapped in the castle or anything, just kind of staying there. From their dialogue, it seems to imply that they couldn't do anything while the kings were still arguing, but let's be honest, we're in a world of madness. It's not something that really supposed to make a lot of sense in the first place. I also kind of find it hilarious about why the princesses wanted Milo in the first place to rescue them.
We had to find a boy who was so bored he would go anywhere and do almost anything to get away from it all.
They also mention he needed kindness and courage, but you should kind of, I don't know, maybe lead with that. With the princesses free, Milo floats down thanks to a timely appearance of the Weatherman and his balloons, while Rhyme and Reason start fixing the world, repairing and returning things to normal, while the last song plays, cheering the fact that the princesses are back in rule. What's cool is that pretty much every character gets a line to sing, eventually joining in the choir at the end.
That Rhyme and Reason reign once more. Let it be known by all.
The movie ends with Milo telling his friend Ralph from the start of the movie about his experiences, which apparently was only 5 minutes to him. That's when we get told that he's got to leave, as a toll booth has appeared in his room now, making Milo smile at the adventure his friend is about to go on, while leaving his own home, seeing the world with new eyes, along with the reprise of Milo's song, though the lyrics are a lot more hopeful, and even start off using the first few lines from Time is a Gift.
Time is a gift, precious and rare. Take it and make it all you can. No hope is too high, my lord.
While not a bad film by any reason, turns out that Juster didn't like how it turned out at all. In fact, it said that the more popular it got, it just made him angrier. Considering the fact that the author was never consulted about the film, I can understand some of the frustration. With that said, I don't think The Phantom Tollbooth is a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not going to be for everyone. I mentioned before how for me, I kinda need a reason for the shows I watch, a focus or a drive. I'm not usually into slice of life stories or just random events strung together. I honestly blame it on suffering through so many sitcoms growing up that anything that feels like it resets to the status quo at the end usually isn't my cup of tea. That lack of focus, however, is what harms the movie for me, even though that's kind of the whole point. A lack of focus is what turned the Kingdom of Wisdom into what it was, disjointed and nonsensical. From what I recall and seen about the book, it's not much different in that aspect, and if you're curious about some of the things that were left out of the book, YouTuber Dominic Noble actually covered the Phantom Tollbooth over on his show Lost in Adaptation. But even if the movie isn't for me, that doesn't stop it from having a lot of great elements. The animation, while not perfect, fit that classic Chuck Jones style, and I'll tell you right now that the songs of the film are going to be stuck in my head for the next couple of weeks. It's the perfect kind of movie to show to kids, something that might just be the thing to encourage them to learn, to maybe find more interest in it. Even if it doesn't cure the apathy of the world, you'll at least come away singing a few catchy songs, and maybe just have a bit more appreciation for the rhyme and the reason the world offers. With all that said, I hope I've done a good job to entertain you, and I'll do my best to do so again in the future. Hopefully you'll follow along with my content by subscribing and doing all the other things that gives us YouTubers life. If you wish to support me a bit more, I do have a Patreon where you can get access to bonus content. But until next time, stay frosty. Time is a gift given to you to give time to need, the time to need to have the time of your life.